And then what did you decide to do after you were no longer with your dad's minister shop?
Well, I was talking to some friends one night, and one of them working for Levac Corporation, and this friend told me, he says, "Look, you need to go put in your application. I think they could probably use someone." The company was growing pretty quickly, and they felt like he felt like that they would need someone else in sales. So I made that application, and after being bounced around to different divisions, there were like 5 divisions of this company. It was very well diversified. I ended up in the retail division, where they made me an offer, and I first turned it down because I thought, I want to get away from retailing, but ended up taking the job, and I was pretty happy in it because it was an outside sales job for Traction Tire and Appliance, where I called on the oil companies mostly. Texaco was my biggest account.
Now that's an interesting position for you to have, especially with regard to your bid for the lieutenant governor's position, because I understand that the lieutenant governor's position is really a salesperson for the state of Louisiana. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But what did you? How long did you stay in that position? And I understand that sometime after that you went into business for yourself. Tell me about how you transitioned from working for someone to owning your own company.
Well, I guess, entrepreneurs are born, I believe, that, people that are risk takers. And I was very happy in the company. There was no dissatisfaction. I just wanted to try something on my own. And in 1977, December of 77, a friend I was working with in the business, for Levac, and I talked about maybe going out on our own and opening a tire store and automotive parts, speed equipment. Both of us had an interest in automobiles, and decided that this might be a good retail venture. So we did it, actually it was 76 when we talked about it. 77, early 77, March, we were in business for ourselves.
Now, that turned out to be a very successful business for you. I know that you stayed in that position for 30 years. So what kind of things did you do in the business? I know that you were the owner, but what kind of things did the business do? What kind of business was it?
Well, we went into the tire business and auto parts business, as I was telling you, and ended up opening a store in Thibodaux on St. Mary Street in Thibodaux, along with the one in Morgan City. Shortly after we opened the store in Thibodaux, the people at Levac came and approached me about buying their store that I was working in previously.
Okay.
And they had, as a corporation, they made a decision that they were going to get out of retailing, and wanted to give me first shot at it. We went to the bank approved the loan, and then it was history. We were in the furniture and appliance business at that time. I guess about 2 years later, we decided that business was growing so fast that I needed my partner with me, and we needed to hire more people, and we decided to sell off the tire and auto parts businesses. Pellegrin Auto Parts here in Houma bought the store from us in Thibodaux, and Osborne's Tire bought the one in Morgan City. And so that put us just in the home appliance and furniture and electronics business.
Now, at this point, you're in Morgan City, and you've been there for decades, having been raised there, having left to live several places in Louisiana, then coming back to Morgan City,
right.
And then you're now a successful business owner at this point in your life. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And now, at some point along the way, you own a business, you've traveled some, you've lived in other parts of the state. At some point, you decide to run for public office. Was that something that was always in the back of your mind? Did you always think about that? Or how did that come about that you wanted to run for public office?
I always paid attention to politics, and it goes back to growing up. My dad was one of these guys who got involved in other people's campaigns, to help his friends get elected to office. And
did your father ever run for political office?
Never ran for political office himself. And one of the things that he said was that raising a big family He didn't feel like he should be in politics. He needed to be running his business and going to work, coming home, and taking care of the family. And I think that was the right decision for him. I waited, I think, being influenced by him, I waited until my business was very mature and my children were both college graduates and, pretty much off on their own and doing their own thing. So it was my wife and I and the dog, and we decided, the dog, I think, voted yes, that I would go into politics. Thought about going into local politics, but decided that, it would be easier, because I'm still in business, to be in state politics where you're not constantly in your political office. Right. So I thought.
Right.
And so anyway, we ran successfully in 1995. Took office in January of 96.
Now, up until 1995, which would have been at that point the majority of your life, you were a registered Republican. But in 1995, when you ran for office, you transferred and changed your political affiliation to become a registered Democrat. Why did you make that transition at that point in your career and in your life?
Well, I grew up in a house of Democrats, and I think I started off as a Democrat, and I was a Reaganite, Republican. But the more and more I watched what was going on in the Republican Party at that time, I just wasn't comfortable with a lot of positions that were being taken, and felt like if you're going to run for public office, you need to do it for your constituency. You need to take care of those things that are important to people's lives. And I saw more and more. I'm Roman Catholic and practicing Catholic, but I saw more and more where the Republican Party was moving towards the party of God and the party of religion, and that a lot of the initiatives that were coming from the Republican Party had to do with pushing, Christianity, which I'm a Christian. I certainly understand that, but I also know that I studied the Constitution, and I believe the founding fathers knew what they were doing when they called for in our Constitution separation of church and state. We've seen what can happen to a country where you have a religious foundation for your country, and it doesn't turn out too well. So I didn't like that, and there were some other things. I thought that the Republican Party was anti-worker at the time. It was this constant move to hold down wages for working people, and I just didn't see that as the right thing to do. I think that everybody ought to be paid a fair wage, and I got into trouble a few times, over pushing a minimum wage for Louisiana workers because the Congress wouldn't do anything.
Okay. Now, when you ran, obviously you ran as a Democrat in 1995 for the state House of Representatives. I want to talk to you a little bit more when we come back from the break about your first term in office and how you got here to the Senate, and now your bid for the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Louisiana. We'll be right back with Butch Gautreaux on Interview with Mike Billiot.
Remember my name, and it's probably 'cause you think you're cooler than me. You got your highbrow, switching your walk, and you don't even look.
Hello, and welcome back to Interview with Mike Billiot. Today, my guest is Louisiana State Senator and Lieutenant Governor candidate Butch Gautreaux. Mr. Gautreaux, before we left for the break, we were talking about how you got into political office. Now, I know that you first ran for political office in 1995 when you ran for the Louisiana House of Representatives. How many people did you run against at that time?
I had 6 opponents.
Okay.
And ended up in a runoff with a current state representative for the same district, Joe Harrison, who's done a great job, by the way. he's been a very good representative.
As a matter of fact, Mr. Harrison represents a part of Terrebonne Parish, and I guess you did too when you were in that
same
position.
District, same
okay.
district, yeah.
How many people did you represent?
I
when
think it was
you
around 36,000 people.
Okay. And what was the geographical area of Louisiana that you represented as a congressman?
As a representative, I had half of St. Mary Parish from the Atchafalaya going west, going east, and then I had about half of Assumption Parish, and about a third of Terrebonne Parish at that time, and that was the entire district.
Okay, and you spent 4 years in the House of Representatives. That was your first elected position. What was it like being a new congressman in the House of Representatives when you had never served in political office before in 1996 when you took office?
Well, it was a learning experience right from the beginning. I visited the House of Representatives probably 6 or 7 times before deciding to get into the race, just to watch how things were going. Before that, I'm reading in the Times-Picayune that we don't get the Times-Picayune any longer in Morgan City. I think home is as far as they come to the west. But reading in the paper every day, about what was going on during the sessions, it sounded very interesting and interesting enough to make me take a few days off from work and drive to Baton Rouge and watch the goings on. Got to know some of the people that were there, and actually, when I talked about running, picked up support, from folks that were there already.
And I know that after 4 years in the House of Representatives and having gained some experience within the legislature, you decided to run for the Senate position.
Yeah.
And obviously were successful. What made you want to transition from the House of Representatives to the state Senate?
Most of politics is opportunity, and that's what this run is about. I'm currently running for lieutenant governor because Mitch Landrieu was elected mayor of New Orleans. That created an open seat, although it's only 1 year left on his term, which needs to be filled. Incumbency makes a big difference when it comes to the re-election. In both cases, when I ran for the House of Representatives and for the Senate, it was an open seat. In other words, at the time, the current representative was moving up to the Senate, and that was John Siracusa. He spent 4 years in the Senate, but made a decision early on that he didn't want to continue. He did that because he was asked to run for that seat. And anyway, he let me know that he wasn't going to continue in that seat, and I asked him if he had any problem with me letting it be known that I would like to have that, run for the Senate, which he had no problem with, and so that's the history. Although it was a very, very contested race, it turned out to be a very strongly contested race.
How many people ran for the state Senate position against you?
I think it was 4 or 5 initially. I ended up in a runoff with a car dealer from Morgan City, Mike Domino, and because of my position, the positions that I took in the House, which was very, very much pro-fishermen, commercial fishermen. I saw that these people were losing income, not being allowed to fish as they had done and historically in Louisiana, because I saw workers that I didn't feel were being treated properly. I defended them, and I don't know. I guess, what I can say about all of my public life is that I've been for the underdog, and that's caused me to have problems in the in the corporate world. That a lot of them don't really appreciate me because they feel like they need me to be representing them, and I feel like there's plenty of people that they're willing to represent corporate Louisiana, corporate America. There's not very many people willing to step out and represent people, the working people that make this country great.